Took a trip to Japan and I ended up buying a samurai sword while I was there. You know, there is definitely a whole story behind the sword. There is a whole story. This is Ronnie Stanley. This is how I spent and saved my first $1 million. I was raised in Las Vegas, Nevada. It was very unique. I feel like I was exposed to a lot of different cultures, a lot of things that a lot of people wouldn't normally see growing up. We always wanted to, go out and experience, the strip and the clubs and stuff. I may or may not have tried to sneak in a bar or two and may or may not have been kicked out. I don't recommend doing that. It's worth waiting. In high school, my parents were very big on sports and athletics. Literally, I really didn't have time to work a job. All my time was spent on football and basketball. It was funny, I really didn't have money, like spending money growing up because I didn't have a job. I was spending all my time in sports. But yeah, I did, chores around the house, just the classic, let me ask my dad for 20 bucks or something. But I didn't really grow up having, a lot of material things. Like I didn't have a lot of shoes. I didn't have a lot of, new clothes, like new brand clothes or whatever. When I was drafted 6th overall, it was kind of realization of like my whole life into one moment. You grow up wanting to be a pro athlete, you grow up with all the dreams, and then it becomes real reality in a matter of seconds. It's kind of surreal in the moment, I didn't really, it's kind of hard to take in, looking back. It was one of those moments that you'll just, talk with your grandkids about, and the day that, the lineage of the family, changed, for generations. You can see the details in my rookie contract right here. Before I ever got drafted, I kind of set like my whole team up before, everything. I had an advisor, a lawyer, accountant, agent. By the time I got drafted, I had, all the people ready and just kind of the money had to be put in the places that we were already discussing. All right, we talked about how I made and saved my money. Now let's talk about how I spent my money. First thing I bought with my first $1 million, a BMW X6M sports car. That car was my dream car, and that was a car I always wanted to drive. I just like the look. BMW, 120K. I got it wrapped. I had some rims put on there, some 22s, it was nice. Matte gray, tinted windows. Yeah, it was a beast. I think I spent a little bit extra to modify it, probably like another $2,500, and then the rims were probably another $5K, so probably around $7,500, plus another $10,000 for modifications. Took a trip to Japan. Went with my girl and a couple of friends. I think it ended up being around $20,000. Visited a couple different cities, stayed there for about 2 weeks. It was a great experience. Trip to Japan, 20K. I thought Japan was beautiful. It's a really beautiful place, the way they preserve the tradition. You look at the stuff that's been there for hundreds of years and the craftsmanship and the details that have been put into those things. It's really impressive. And I ended up buying a samurai sword while I was there. And that samurai sword was about $12,000. There is definitely a whole story behind the sword. There is a whole story, but it's like a 4,500-year-old sword. They don't know whose sword it was, but it was custom made for someone in the city, but you needed protection because I guess at that time, like, it was just gangland out there in Japan. Old Japan, it was ruthless. So you had to be prepared at all times. So this was just one of those swords that, a working class citizen would have been walking around in. We have no idea who that guy was, his life, his story, but it's cool that we have something left behind from that long ago. Samurai sword, 12K. Right now it's in its case, it hasn't seen light since it's been, in the States. So I'm keeping it, preserved, prime condition. I want to keep that thing nice, but I think eventually when I buy my home that I'm gonna live in long term, I will have it, a special place for it in there. I love the BMW, but you couldn't drive it like a sports car like you wanted to. It couldn't handle turns well at high speeds. But with the Tesla, it really drives like it's a sports car. Like you can turn super sharp, going really fast, and you never have to go to a gas station. It's a really great car. I really like it, and I did the same thing. I modified it, put some rims on it, a little wrap, a tint, and I think it looks better than the Beamer did. Tesla modifications, 150K. It's faster, It can handle turns better. I never have to go to a gas station ever. You know, great for the environment. Speaking of Tesla, you know, I bought some Bitcoin. It's been kind of rough right now, but I think, you know, Bitcoin's one of those things I'm just gonna leave there for a while. Bitcoin, 150K. I'd invest in Bitcoin because of the ceiling. It's impossible to place a value on something like this because we don't know what situations could happen within society that may grow this value or may diminish the value. So there's a lot of potential growth, and I think that's why I'm okay with putting, you know, a good amount of money into it and seeing what happens. I bought some more art pieces. I have like some paintings, I have some sculptures, I have like a rug. On all my art and collectibles, 200,000 on that. One of the paintings that I got were two of the dogs that I own. I just wanted something to eternalize the animals that, you know, I've, you know, adopted and brought into my lives that, you know, I think made a positive impact for me. The rug I bought from is actually a company they make handmade rugs in Nepal, but the company's based in New York. Once it was already made, they had an artist come out and do like a full tie-dyeing of the rug, like, you know, on this rooftop, and they made this whole video about it. I'm sure you can find the video. This was like his art piece, like, so it was like his canvas. The rug is in my living room. I love looking at it every day. I see the, you know, the sculptures on the wall above, you know, the couch. There are 3 beautiful face sculptures handmade from wood. It pops out and it's like 3D. It's really cool. I'm like a streetwear fashion guy, you know. I like streetwear, you know, like Off-White, Fear of God, Palm Angels, you know. I probably spent around 10K. I don't know. I think maybe 10K over 4 years, I think is a good number. Money spent on fashion, 10K. One of the last things I did spending my first $1 million was buying a house in Baltimore. My first home in Baltimore, anywhere, 600,000. Being in Baltimore has been great. I think the community here, second to none. I think the fans, they support the team. I didn't realize how strong the fan base was in Baltimore, but you know, they're diehard for the Ravens. Beautiful scenery here. I kind of live out in the woods. I got a nice little spot. You know, let my dogs run around, do some outdoor things, you know, so ATV, whatnot. I should have told you about the ATV that I bought. I forgot about the ATV, so 10,000. You know, this is my home in Baltimore, and you know, just having a home and a place to keep your things, it's a very, you know, nice, liberating feeling. But you know, long term, I think, you know, where I'm gonna set my roots, you know, and raise a family, I don't know where that's gonna happen yet. Besides my home, I also own like a luxury condo in Vegas that I rent out. Yeah, it's pretty close to the strip. It's a great location, amenities, all that. And also in the current talks of buying a house in Hawaii. So I am gonna plan on doing the same thing there. But also, you know, definitely plan on spending more time in the off season, taking a good chunk of time and spending it there. That's how I spent my first $1 million, and you know, I feel like looking at it now, it's a lot of money. I feel like I just spent, you know, a lot of money. I kind of want to take it back, but I'm grateful for, you know, just being able to have the money to spend. I also spend money, you know, like on my family members. I always try to help out where I can. I got my dad a Tesla. He loved it, and it was great to surprise him, and he never thought he would own a Tesla. So, you know, I was able to save my grandma's church that she and the rest of my family members been going to for generations, and being able to help them out and to make her happy, you know, it's all worth it. I honestly, for my mom, like, she's always with me, so it's kind of like a never ending, I'm gonna always take care of my mom type thing. We just went to California. I had to take a private jet there because I needed to take my dogs, and you can't take your dogs commercial anymore. So I had to, you know, pay the price to do that. So my mom's right there with me. So she's there helping out. She's living right there with me, and I'm very grateful for her, and you know, I definitely take care of her. I'm actually starting my own charity like right now, and it's called the Ronnie Stanley Foundation. And what we do is we pretty much take dogs from shelters and we pick suitable candidates that we believe that would be trained to be like a serviceable dog. We work with partner trainers and we get those dogs trained, and we let those dogs work with individuals in real life, from depression to anxiety to autism even, and all these things that people do need dogs for. And that's pretty much what we do. We're just showing how animals in need can also help humans in need, just kind of need the right tools and resources. I appreciate y'all watching, keeping up with how I spend my money. I'll see y'all on the football field. Hopefully I make a little bit more.